All right, joining us on Times Now, we have MOS External Affairs and Culture, Member of Parliament, Meenakshi Lekhi. Ma'am, a lot of people think that G20, especially when India has the presidency, is all about the geopolitics, the negotiations that happen, even the business. Not many would know about the logistical effort that goes into it. So as somebody who's literally in the thick of things, give our viewers an idea. What is the blood, sweat and tears that go into it? What are the main logistical challenges in front of you and your ministry?
So I would say the logistical challenges are that when 20 plus 9 other countries, the heads of nations descend on Delhi, they come with plain lot of people with them, their own protocols, their wives, the spouses, and a whole lot of administrative heads also end up being here. For them, the kind of food, the kind of movement, the kind of protocols which need to work at, engagements, keeping them busy, occupied, and yet showcasing what is best in India is all needs to be worked at from minute to minute. And from their landing at the airport to the entire time that they are going to be stationed in the country, and coordination that things happen at the same time. So it's quite an exercise, but really happy to be part of this, and I'm sure all Indians are taking a lot of pride and are involved in the whole process.
The Prime Minister in particular has been very keen on showcasing India's soft power as much as our diplomacy and our hard power, if you can call it that. Since you're also, both the ministries are yours, the External Affairs and the Culture Ministry, how is India planning to bring together culture and diplomacy during the G20 summit?
So I would say that there are a few things which are planned when the heads of state come to Delhi. But going by what we have done before this important event is that India has hosted more than 250 engagements, 250 meetings of various working groups. In 52 locations, 50 plus locations. Now you can imagine 50 locations by itself, one can think of that it's a number which a lot of people may not match up to, but it also exhibits the diversity of our country and unity at the same time. So if you can think of all that is to relish in any human life is by the 5 senses. So your sight, your taste, your touch, your smell. In every way we have tried to showcase all these aspects of material life, human life, and the non-material aspect of the spiritual life of this country. So music, which is spirituality at its best, in its best form. So every region, wherever these meetings have been housed, will showcase the music of that region. The dance performance will come from that region. The state governments will be participating in the entire event. The gifts, etc., will be from that region. The gourmet will come from that region, so you get the taste of what India is, the variety in food and food habits. You get to see different aspects of life. Varanasi, for example, we hosted in the last working group meeting of culture in Varanasi. People got to witness the Ganga Aarti. So Ganga, while people may look at it as a river, for us it's our spiritual goddess and spiritual being which has existed. So worshipping that part has been part of our tradition, and every single day a few 100,000 collect at the banks to do the worship and to do Ganga Aarti, and which was witnessed by people who were our guests. And thus the eternal practices of this country and eternal spirituality which rests in common beings of this country is what we showcased, and also variety of art forms from woodwork to clay pots to other products, textiles, paintings, art forms which one can just cherish from wherever. And best was the Sur Vasudha, which was on Rag Khamaj and Bhairavi, which are traditional Indian music forms. On those ragas we based the entire music, and 29 countries got represented by their musicians, and their instruments being played on that music was a very, very pleasing experience. So to showcase our art, craft, culture, spirituality, textiles, food is what we've tried to showcase with every meeting, and that's been the strength of our country. Recently, the tallest statue of Nataraj has been placed before Bharat Mandapam, which itself is a piece of art on one side, but miracle in its own form. To cast a statue that size in metal, in Ashtadhatu, has been an exercise. And also logistics, as you talked about, it has traveled from Tamil Nadu to Delhi by road. So that also has been part of it.
From soft power, let's do some hard talk now. Given that just a week before the summit is to start, you had China releasing a map which showed parts of Indian territory as its own. Has that queered the pitch at such a critical time?
No, you see, I would say human nature is such that it gets exhibited, or countries get to be represented by the leadership it has. So it's only showcasing the leadership China has, and India is showcasing the leadership India has. And India's leadership is all about harmony, peace, and Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, whereas China objected to this line in Sanskrit from Mahapuran that Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is not something they agree with. So I guess it is showcasing the value system which gets to be countries, fortunately or unfortunately sometimes, get to be represented by its leaders. So that's what the world is facing today. And G20 also has that shadow.
There have been 19 rounds of commander-level talks after the Galwan standoff. Now, sources suggest, people that I was speaking to, that the last round that we had was particularly productive. Is there a possibility of a major breakthrough, if not before, then maybe during the summit? Are you looking at some major development vis-a-vis the talks that we've had with China after Galwan?
I will wait and watch. I would not like to comment at this stage, because any conversation will be a premature conversation at this point.
In particular, when we talk about the talks with China, Rahul Gandhi was in Ladakh. When he came back to Mumbai and was at the meeting of the opposition alliance, he reiterated that large parts of land in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh and in other parts of India have been grabbed by China, and India, or the Indian government, is not being completely transparent about it. Do you think that these are shadows which will loom large over your engagements that will happen with China as well as with other countries during G20? The overall situation, the engagement with China, and how strongly the opposition is attacking the government on it?
So I would say I would divide your question into two parts. One is the internal method, which is a part of a democratic country, and the other is the outsiders who want to engage with India. I think the China stand or Chinese politics or policies is the thought behind other countries to engage with India, especially post-COVID-19 pandemic, because people know that supply chains can break, and the manner in which these supply chains have led to misery at a global village level is why people wish to engage with India. And it is it is a thought process which is working in the minds of the whole of the world, that to engage with India is beneficiary, because we are not interested in toppling governments or doing things. We are simply interested in whatever you give or whatever you take is on board, and it's very straightforward, and that's what India brings. India brings confidence with its engagement. India brings both quality and compassion, and which is why people should engage with India. That's one part. On the internal front, I would say the opposition is left with discredited faces, especially when it comes to China. What credit does a person like Rahul Gandhi bring to the table when so many nefarious engagements were going on between India and China on the borders? At that point, this gentleman was visiting embassy of China and hiding that fact, not declaring it, and then subsequently it was the Chinese embassy which showcased his pictures and made a declaration about it. So I think a face which is discredited, especially with respect to the history with China and its own party's engagement with China, cannot be the one voicing the concern vis-a-vis Indian people and Chinese people, or representing India with respect to the Chinese claims. I would leave it to the people who are handling the situation to come forward and deal with it, and also work in the interest of the country.
One of the things that really stood out during some of the working groups that were touring different parts of our country was the tourism group which went to Kashmir. A few countries decided to stay out of that working group, but was there a conscious effort to ensure that Kashmir is one of the focal points when the G20 countries come to our country?
So, as I said, there are 50 plus locations we worked at, and when you talk about India, I think Kashmir is one location which we would want people to visit, especially with respect to tourism, because the tourism potential of that place is immense. And the fears which people try to instill in the minds of the world at large, and the changes which have happened post revocation of 370 and 35A is what the world needs to witness with their own eyes. So even the countries which visited by itself is an example. Those who chose not to visit would have got inputs on them. And I'm sure they would love to visit Kashmir for tourism purposes, and also the diverse culture which Kashmir represents and the depth of the culture which Kashmir represents. People really do not know the history of Kashmir very well.
But were they convinced? Because even as we speak, there are continuous efforts to try and say that freedom of speech is under siege in Kashmir, free media is under siege in Kashmir, even the status of Kashmiri people, that they haven't been given back their statehood, that remains a constant narrative, especially in foreign press. Were all the visiting countries convinced of what you are telling us?
So, you know, in Hindi there is a saying, "Haath kangan ko arsi kya aur padhe likhe ko farsi kya." So those who have visited, and we offered it to all to visit. It's your loss if you chose not to visit because you want to build a certain narrative, or you're convinced by a certain narrative, or you know the real narrative and you don't wish to look the other way. So that is one way of looking at it. But so far as Kashmir is concerned, people probably did not know, which I'm sure they know it now, is that the people of Kashmir were suffering because of Article 370. The grassroots, which represents through the village bodies, panchayat elections, were not taking place for years and years and years on. For every other election, MLA election will happen, but panchayat election will not happen. There was gender discrimination because of 370 and 35A, that girls will lose their status if they marry outside the state. and if that is not controlling the freedom of expression of a person, who that person falls in love with or chooses to marry, then or gender justice, what else would the gender justice be? I fail to wonder. So these were anti-democratic forces, anti-women forces, anti-civilizational forces which tried to portray Kashmir as a disturbed state, which it is not. Most people are peace-loving. Most people want a peaceful life. They are aspirational. They celebrate India. They celebrated Chandrayaan-3 success. They celebrate all that is happening in this country, but that narrative doesn't suit the people who are being co-opted from the opposite side of the border, or are being funded from the opposite side of the border, or have retained the power by those narratives, will sing a certain song. But I think that the music which they think was a song is not a music, but a loud shriek, because that is disturbing the harmony and peace of the people who are singing the paeans of Kashmir, who are singing for harmony and well-being of humanity.
Speaking of narratives, for the longest time it has been said that India, the entire narrative of India being, and more so now more than ever in the run-up to the elections, about how India has a problem with its minorities, more specifically the Muslim population. This was also a narrative that was spread globally by oil-producing countries, helmed, of course, by Pakistan, the Islamic countries. In the last 9 years, the Modi government has made a particular outreach, especially to the Middle East. Now we have the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia staying back. What are our expectations from this state visit?
So I would say that people in the Middle East, especially the Arab world, have been our neighbors from time immemorial, and they've traded with us. They have been on educational front. We've had various exchanges. Usually the doctors, the vets have been from India. The almanac to everything else, to numerology, to numbers, have gone from India, and through them to the West. So people who know all this know about Indian traditions and know the value of engaging with India. And in between, their narrative building shifted and changed. But I must say, people also recognize that all the 72 firqas of Islam live in this country, which not many Islamic nation can also claim. And that's the beauty of this country, where 70% and above are Hindus, and yet all the 72 firqas of Islam exist in this country, which many Islamic nations cannot claim. And all the 70 firqas of Christianity also exist in this country, which many Christian nations cannot claim. All the Jews of the world, when they were persecuted, came to this country and India housed them. All the Parsis of the world, when they were persecuted, India housed them. So respect for minority, rights of minority, believing in plurality, there is not us versus them. Those thoughts are alien to this culture, and that's why we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I think we also keep mirrors in the room, and we also keep mirrors in the temple. Let everyone look at themselves instead of commenting at the world.
The other issue on which human rights have been made out to be a concern is the violence in Manipur. Now, while America, when asked specifically, said that it's India's internal matter, however, the ambassador said that if asked for help, America is willing to help out in Manipur. Several civil society groups also in the US have raised concern about the attack on churches in Manipur during the ethnic violence that has taken place there. What is the government going to do? How is it prepared to take on criticism that may happen during G20 on the issue of Manipur?
No, I'm sure government will have its own stand, and I don't think it's being raked up for the simple reason people know the truth. People know there is a war on drugs which is going on, and internal matters of a country are the internal matters of that country. And specifically, there has been a conflict between Kukis and Nagas. And Nagas are also Christians and Kukis are also Christian. That has also been the history of Manipur. So without dwelling much into it, there is a certain section within the country and maybe forces from outside the country which are trying to make it to be Christian versus non-Christian issue, which is not a fact, and people know that. And there are Metis who are Christians also. So it's a conflict which is actually a war on drugs, which is probably harming certain sects who are engaged in illegitimate trafficking of drugs, are causing some difficulties. But I'm sure law and order has taken its control, and Indian state has done its work well.
My final question to you is...
And especially the statement which was made. Let me just add one more line.
Yes, go on.
So I would say on Manipur, I don't really have much to speak on other than the statement which was made by the Honorable Home Minister in the Parliament itself. So those who still have confusion can go back and listen to his speech or seek a copy of that and read it up.
My final question to you is, a special session of Parliament has been called soon after the G20 summit concludes. The opposition parties have a complaint that everything, one, is turned into an event, and two, that everything is turned into as some personal achievement of the Modi government for electoral purposes. How would you respond to that? That everything is, oh, India is a Vishwa Guru, oh, Modi government has done it, oh, nobody did it. They're saying this is cyclical, nothing special.
I would only say that if it is cyclical, let's look at the time frame before 2014, compare the data, compare the detail, and we can all look at it. And I'll be waiting for the data and detail and comparative study. I have done it, right from Jan Dhan accounts to feeding 80 crore plus people to vaccination. I know this country did not get vaccines for 25 odd years, 30 odd years, and beyond. So let's not get into this tutu meme. At this auspicious occasion of G20 presidency, we can continue doing this in run-up to the elections.
But is G20 being politicized, the summit?
Well, as you say, haath na angur khatte. Those in whose time this scale of management did not happen would today obviously will feel unnerved, but those who have been able to add and build assets to the country, those who have been able to add value to every individual of this country who believe in Jan Bhagidari and make it as people's movement, everybody in this country a stakeholder, I think it's an achievement of a nation. If you can host 250 plus engagements in 50 odd cities, or 50 odd locations, I think it's an achievement for a country, and showcase all the diversity from gourmet to textiles to gifts to music, dance. I think it should be appreciated as it is being appreciated by all the people at large who are visiting this great country.
Well, the success and
all the state governments who are participating.
Success and the pride is for the country as a whole. Very best of luck, Ms. Meenakshi Lekhi, and thanks very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.